So, not too long ago, one of the most commonly used phrases I used to hear was generational curse. And as I got older, I started realizing that a lot of people say the phrase without ever really explaining what that means. Because realistically, a generational curse is not magic. To me, it's a repeated behavior, repeated habits, repeated trauma, repeated emotional patterns, repeated ways of thinking that keeps getting passed down from generation to generation because nobody stopped long enough to recognize it and intentionally make changes. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we can make is believing that generational curses only come from our past. Sometimes we create the new ones ourselves without even realizing it, especially as parents, because children, what they commonly see, they begin to normalize. If a child is constantly growing up around screaming, they're more likely to start believing that screaming is a normal part of communication. If a child constantly sees disrespect between parents, they could potentially grow up thinking toxic relationships are perfectly normal. If a child grows up believing that money is only for appearances or things that you can get from it, they may adopt the same financial habits later on in life. And sometimes we unintentionally teach behaviors simply because they became normal to us first. It's not even something that we recognize as a problem. That's why I think intentional parenting matters so much. Not perfect parenting, intentional parenting. Because your children are always learning from you, even when you're not actively teaching or trying to teach them anything at all. They learn from how you talk to others, how you respond, how you handle conflict, and a number of other things. But the scary part about all of that is a lot of behaviors don't fully reveal themselves until much later in their lives. Now, I'm not saying that every mistake creates a generational curse. We're human after all. We're all going to make mistakes, and we should be allowed to do so. But I do think it's important to ask yourself difficult questions from time to time. What behaviors am I normalizing? What emotional patterns am I teaching? What habits could I potentially be passing down intentionally and unintentionally? Because breaking a cycle starts with recognizing that the cycle exists, that there is one to begin with. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can say is, "This stops with me."